Hello everyone, welcome to the TPLO online e-talk session, Bringing Social Change with Arts. So TPLO is actually a series of silent talk revolving the discussion of philosophies and humanities, an arts and culture exchange platform between Taiwan and Malaysia, organized by the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Malaysia, in collaboration with the INXO Arts Fund and produced by the INXO Arts and Culture Foundation. So I'm Yijen. I will be your moderator for today. Let's welcome our fabulous Katie Hong, our speaker today. So Katie actually is the chairperson of the Performing Arts Network Development Association, known as PANDA in Taiwan. And she's also served as an advisor for Cloudgate Dance Theatre, Alien Art Center, and Vocal Asia Festival. She's a art professional with extensive experience in theatre and international collaboration. She's also former executive director of OISTAT, the International Organization of Scenographers, Theatre Architects and Technicians, in 2012 to 2015. And then she is the Marketing Communications Director of National Kaohsiung Theatre during 2015 to 2019. Basically, Katie will share with us in the direction of bringing social change with arts today. So let's welcome Katie.
Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? Because it started to rain really hard in Taipei now. So I just want to make sure this is good volume. Yes? Nodding?
Very clear, very clear.
All right, great. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in on this Saturday afternoon to chat with me. My name is Kathy Hong, and I am based in Taiwan, based in Taipei. Well, first of all, I want to thank INXO Arts and Culture Foundation and the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Malaysia for this opportunity to share ideas on this platform. What I will be sharing today is some of my observations, personal beliefs, and we will be talking about bigger principles, such as what I selected for today is social change. We will be looking at some case studies in the past that I have observed or I have actually executed. And then we will probably talk a little bit about the current COVID-19 pandemic and how it has affected us. What impacts and how we can think about this from this point on. How can we move on, and what other possibilities there may be in the future for us. So like Yijen said, thank you, fabulous Yijen, a very good friend. There will be section pauses, which we can answer questions that you might have during the segments that we are discussing. So we don't really need to wait until the end to address any questions or any comments that you might have. Welcome all perspectives. It would be more interesting if we could actually fire up any discussions. So as we go along the way, just pop in anytime at the chat session, questions or comments. And then as I share some materials, I won't be able to see it simultaneously, but Yijen and the team will be collecting them. And then when we have a breather, we could come back to them. Okay, so don't be shy. All right, so what I'm sharing today mostly is, I cannot say it's completely right or wrong, because the world evolves every single day, and we evolve around the world. We evolve with the world. So a lot of what's done before, it may not, in present day, it may slightly change. So I don't want to give you the feeling that whatever's done or whatever's decided is absolutely correct and suitable for everybody and every circumstance or every moment in time. So for me, it's, and also a lot of what I've done is based in based on the context of my home market in Taiwan, it may be very, well, I have to say, I think it's drastically different from what it is in Malaysia. So I think it's mostly a better decision that pertains to the situation when that decision was made. And I just wanted to say that I do feel that why I chose the topic, because in the past a lot of people have asked me, how do you market? How do you brand? How do you market? I think it's very specific to what you do, who you market to, what you want to say. And we're all very deeply connected with everyone else. And so I think in order for us to stay relevant to the world, we have to be really attuned and really aware to what's happening in our communities, in our society, in the world. And we really need to know and try to understand the world. And that is crucial to what we do, either creating art or promoting creative ways to promote arts. So take the current pandemic, for example. When the whole world is locked down, we are actually one of the first to be so fully impacted. Maybe a lot of companies shuttered or will be closing down. So we're deeply impacted in the arts, I believe, is because we are a people's business, basically. So we rely on social gatherings. We rely on people coming together to create. And certainly we rely on people to come out and see what we've created. So theater going is actually a very unique and definitely a very unique experience, or it should be very unique experiences. So I think, first of all, I want to sort of touch on remember our experiences. So I want you to think back, if you like, whether now or just jot down the questions and answer it for yourself later. I want you to think back and jot down 5 moments in life that you deem memorable. The 5 aha moments in life. As I was trying to pull material, I came across this very short questionnaire that a friend of mine who's in a radio program asked me to do in 2015. And this is one of the questions. And I look back on that, I still think it's quite relevant. So the moments that you actually recall vividly often has a lifelong impact on what you do and how you think, how you assess situations, environments, and most importantly, they probably also dictate how you make decisions, whatever decision that may be. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my 5 aha moments in the course of growing up until now, which is a couple decades now. So the first one is from my father when I was in uni. He told me don't rush to earn a living. Basically what he's trying to say is experience life at the fullest whenever you can. Because you're gonna, once you graduate from school, you're gonna have to slave yourself for the rest of your life, keeping yourself alive and just you don't have a choice to actually having to earn your living. So that was from, I think it was from a sophomore year, maybe, when all of my classmates are really keen on getting part-time jobs and sharing experiences on that. And that is what actually my father told me. So the second one is also from my father, Beware Not to Shine Too Bright. I got this when I was in high school. I think just from his experience, not to try to be so front and center, let everybody shine in their own way. And I think that he's just cautioning me and hoping that I don't learn life's lessons the hard way. It's still very valuable to me, especially working from behind the scenes now. This is something, you know, the limelight is something that we usually shy away from. The third one is actually something that I read with an interview with Robert Lepage. Robert Lepage is a very renowned theater visionary. He said in this interview that people have gymnastic minds. I started being obsessed with him and his works is from 2009 when he brought a work called Lip Sync to Taipei Arts Festival. It is a 7-hour work. I saw it in 3 installments, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. A lot of people saw it in one go during the weekend. But it created such an impact, such a memorable experience for me that I started to follow his works. And whenever I could travel, I would travel to see his work and read everything that that is published about him. And this is something that really stuck to me as I work in the arts for many years. It's basically saying that when we think that people come to the theater, it's for taking after work, is, you know, for relaxation. It's actually not the case. Actually, people are more invigorated when they are stimulated with ideas, with new ideas, with new experiences, new learnings about different things. So it's actually for us not to actually numb the senses, but actually to stimulate the audience senses. So this has really been a very helpful model that I follow in whatever we do in events that we plan, we organize. Even for the slightest, even talks, we try to, the format, the topics, the people, we try to make it so that it actually can stimulate the mind a little bit as people follow us. And number 4 is a British contemporary dance company called DV8. I don't think they're on hiatus right now, but I saw this work called Can We Talk About This a couple years ago in the Kaohsiung Spring Arts Festival. It blew my mind, I have to say. It's these moments when you see really, really interesting work of art that makes you think about other worlds, other perspectives, other cultures. That's what's really valuable about the arts. And it sticks to you forever. This was about, this was in a couple of multitudes, and it's about very sensitive religious religions in the Middle East. If you can catch it, I don't want to go into details about it, but this is one of the works that I deem really interesting and you really want to go back and see. And that's how we see art, especially theater productions, is that we like to see art in layers. So you keep coming back or wanting to come back to see it again and again, because you feel that the first time your focus is on something else and you must have missed something. So that's what makes people want to come back and see it again. But of course, it has to be a great work, has to be a great experience, and it actually speaks to you and just inspires you on certain topics, or that actually motivates you to want to learn more about the said topic or about somebody. Very much like the experience I had with viewing Robert Lepage lip sync work in 2009. And number 5 aha moment is also, I believe, in the university when I saw my theater colleagues, or people that I work with in theater or I play theater with. There are so many talents in the performing arts world that I just realized one day. I started out in the theater as a performer, and then I saw a lot of talented performers. And being on stage, you need to have that charisma that captures people. And I think to myself that there's no way that I could ever compete. So I chose another path. I went into directing. And then after a couple of years, I got so busy. And then I realized that people in the performing arts field are mostly these creative forces that are putting on interesting content. There are less support behind the scenes, administrative-wise, marketing-wise, to help these talents to be pushed out into the world. And that's how I sort of made another turn, and then an alternative path again into producing. And then along the way, I realized that what the field probably needs me more is actually in branding and marketing. And that's how I really, in the past 15 years, really focused on marketing and branding for the arts, in the arts. So those are the 5 aha moments that I had in life. I have to say, experiences, they are proven to be most memorable, more than any physical objects that you can ever purchase. So we can see that travel has become such a big thing in the past 20 years. People travel for memorable experiences, and memorable experiences are like adrenaline. It recharges people, and it is addictive. So people keep coming back for more and more. So it's actually these intangibles, experiences are intangible, that actually supersedes, in my point of view, the values of tangibles in people's lives. And experiences are definitely carried for life. And so we said earlier that theater going is definitely a unique experience, or it should be a unique experience. So presented as an experience, what more can we do to make it count? This is a quote from dance visionary Martha Graham, long time ago. She said that theater is a verb before it is a noun. It's an act before it is a place. So for us, for me, what I believe in is actually theater is about action, getting audiences to participate, to think, to follow. It is a call to action. So when we do our creations, what do we want people to take away? Okay. So this brings us to what I want to touch about, is bringing social change with arts. This is what I believe we are in the arts for. This is what I am in the arts for. I believe that we can make a difference, however minuscule that might seem. I still believe that. Every dream, every movement starts from small steps. It has to start from somewhere. So we want to, certainly we're here because in the arts, because we want to bring better changes to the world. I hope so. And through experiences, connecting people, that's how we can change the world bit by bit. This is what I believe in. And if you don't believe in this, I would love to hear why you are in the arts. Okay. So I think a lot of you might be thinking, this sounds really idealistic. Like, where's this girl from? Where is this woman from? Like, talking about social change. I think it's actually very practical and very, very true. Not only in the arts, I have to say, most successful brands that we know has a larger purpose, and actually coins their brand value and change for the better and change for the future. And with that, we need to start with a vision. I was reading Business Week and a while ago, and it was talking about Tesla, the Elon Musk with sustainable cars. And I read up on that. Tesla, actually, in 2006, when Elon Musk wanted to make solar energy cars, he stated his vision for Tesla is to help expedite the move from a hydrocarbon economy, so fuel, towards a solar electric economy, a more sustainable solution. And I have to say, we see Teslas on the streets more and more, and they're at a premium price. So people who purchase Tesla certainly choose the vehicle for reasons more than just driving. If you just want to drive, there are so many options at a lower price. Why choose Tesla? Okay, so come to think of it, when you have options to your purchase, what else do you consider for your decision? And what your brand will stand for, or stand out in the decision-making process of the consumer. So arts is no different. We might even be facing harder challenges as a lot of consumers compare us with entertainment as well. And when you have entertainment, especially during lockdown, when you have entertainment like Netflix, why do you need to get up, get dressed, get out of your pajamas, get dressed, drive 40 minutes or take the metro for 40 minutes to go to a theater, to be locked in the theater for 2 hours, no access to your phone? It actually requires people to make a committed choice to go to the theater. So for me, is actually for your brand to work, for your work to mean something, it has to be relevant to people, and it has to bring a bigger value. And I certainly believe that we need to dream big, and we need to have higher purposes. And what brand essentially is actually this idea in the consumer's mind, is this idea or this gut feeling of what they think you are. So let's say, the most evident brand in our faces today is Apple. So what we think about Apple is being different, thinking different. Looking at Microsoft, it's actually how it's really successful, but what they started out was with the vision is quite simple, is to empower people to achieve more. And so what does that even mean? Like, what is our bigger dream or a bigger purpose, and how do we go about doing that? So like I just said, that big dreams can start and must start with very small steps. It can be conveying just a positive message. It can be shifting ideas or perceptions. It can be filling in a gap in between, or what we see is lacking in society, or whatever is in our surroundings. It can be education for the future, for a better tomorrow. So it's basically, what I see it is how we see where we want to be, what we want the society and the world to be, especially in the arts. We're in the people business, so we should have accumulated sensitivities to happenings, and we should have observed and gained, or mostly developed, a deeper understanding on multiple issues. I believe that everyone that chooses to stick in the arts, to be in the arts, are actually forward thinkers, or should be forward thinkers. And we should think about how to take along the people surrounding us, and those who believe in us, those who are willing to follow us to where that better place that we see. And we need to lead in that. So as we said, that it can start small. So how do we do that? And I want to give you a couple of examples that I have seen or done in the past couple of years. Some are successful, some are not too successful in my terms, but we can discuss about that. First of all, this is something that is quite valuable. It is a baby step towards a better tomorrow, to making changes in society and policies. Is actually just creating opportunities to facilitate dialogue and discussions. This is actually from 2019, last year in February. It is the Sydney City Recital Hall, in collaboration with the Mardi Gras. They had put on a concert called Requiem Mass, A Queer Divine Right. As soon as they decided to do that and publicize this event, they got a lot of backlashes, a lot of threats, a lot of protests on the issue. And this is a letter from the CEO of the City Recital Hall, Elaine Chia, at the time. I'm just going to read the center part, which is what I think is the actually the more main message for everybody, and certainly for me. So just to touch on that, there were a lot of people who said that it was offensive to their religion, putting on this concert, and there are threats going in. So she said that I expected there will be some who are not in favor of the concert, but of course everyone is entitled to their opinion. But freedom of speech should never be discriminatory or abusive. The second part, let me be crystal clear. This became a catchphrase during that time. Let me be crystal clear. The City Recital Hall's stated values are to be inclusive, to champion diversity. By engaging with all genres, all people, and all ideas, we celebrate the voices of the whole community. And after that, we need to move past hatred, to embrace dialogue, and do our part to build a society where all people can express themselves without discrimination. I love this. I have this saved on my laptop. This is a constant reminder for us. It really inspired me a lot last year. It constantly reminded me not to shy away from challenges, difficulties, and moreover is to champion and facilitate dialogues, to let people have a platform, have an arena for discussions. Okay. Elaine Jia now is, she's left the City Recital Hall Sydney. She is now the executive director of the Adelaide Festival as of, I think, this year, early this year. This is an example also from last year. It is from the 2019 Aichi Triennale in Japan. So last year, there was this big controversy at the Aichi Triennale causing the shutdown of the section called After Freedom of Expression. It's not the whole Triennale that shut down. It's this particular section which housed this particular work by Korean artists centered on the issue of wartime comfort women. This, of course, I don't want to go into the details of this. You can look it up. This, of course, can be seen in very different views. One overarching topic that was hot in the arts field in Japan since last year, since Aichi, until this year is still an ongoing discussion, is about censorship. There was an outcry from the arts field, is that the government and the festival's censorship on the arts, that they decided to shut down this part of the exhibition. But there is, however, from other people, whether from the festival's point of view or from other artists or from the community, there is another angle at which the exhibition is shut down in concern of public safety, because there were death threats since this artwork went on exhibition. It closed on day 4 since it opened. So earlier this year in February in Yokohama during TPAM, I sat in this discussion on this topic with panelists talking about censorship, especially taking the Aichi Triennale as example. So the panelist actually is formed by from lawyers, professors, from arts policy experts, festival directors, and artists. And before that panel, before I joined that panel, I was always a very avid advocate for freedom of expression, for equality, for arts and social movements. But after that, seeing one incident or one event, one issue from very different angles, and just very stating the facts, I believe that it has made me realize that we ourselves need more understanding of where opposition or other contributing parties are coming from. And I think this revelation in itself is a very successful change factor to enable people, especially in this case, myself, to try and see as many sides as possible. It may not change the stand that I take, but it may change how I come to terms with other parties and myself, at least in the speed for change. or how we brace ourselves for these very sensitive debates, and how much more that we need to research and study if we want to move forward in what we believe is better for the future, that we would be prepared to defend or to debate our beliefs. I have here of Arts, Politics, and Censorship at IG Triennale. This is the title of the interview that this online media stir conducted with the chief festival curator. So reading through this might provide different insights for you to the incident or the issue. It also comes at it from very different angles. So I'm going to leave that with you. We move on to the new member. This is a musical production from Taiwan's theater group called Rebel Lads. It first premiered in 2014 in Taipei. It is a high school teen story about music, about identifying with yourself, about love, about friendship. It sold out in Taipei in its first run. It sold out more than 10 shows quickly. It went for another concert run the same year, later that same year, that also sold out. It went for a comeback second run in 2016. And this time it not only performed in Taipei, it also traveled outside of Taipei. And that was when I was at the National Kaohsiung Center for the Arts in what we nicknamed Weiwuying. This was actually a very good production, actually. But among the multiple topics that it embodied, there is the LGBT topic and issue. And this was, when it started, it was in 2014 and then went into second run in 2016. And in Taiwan, the gay rights movement started in the 80s, but the peak of the movement is perhaps only these very recent years. And then we achieved the same-sex marriage bill in 2019. So, and I have to admit that it is actually the capital of the country, which is Taipei, like many, many capitals around the world, that is more progressive and forward-thinking, that pushes along changes. So this production did very, very well in Taipei. And so we were super excited in Kaohsiung, which is the southern city. It was the second largest city back then. We were very excited to invite this production to the city for our audiences. So when it traveled to Kaohsiung in 2016, the box office was actually a flop. I think it only achieved, if I remember correctly, I think it only achieved maybe 60 to 70% box office. That's considered very bad for us. And in comparison to how well it did in Taipei, this is actually a shame on us that we could not move past this benchmark. I was at the Art Center that time. And of course, in these days, that the way we market and promote anything now is very transparent and should be very transparent. You can't lie to the customers. You can't hide. And with such sensitive subjects, you need to at least hint on it, at the very least. So people who are sensitive to the subject can decide for themselves if they want to come and see the show. But anyhow, there's so much that we can do. And still there are people that we can't reach. And some audience members were shocked and left the show halfway. And that was to be expected. I remember after the show, a couple days after the show, one very important patron said to me that she was very polite and being very discreet about her own opinions, at least definitely not shouting at me. She said, maybe we shouldn't put on these shows of such sensitive issues. It's not healthy, she said. And we were having coffee. So I said, oh, well, you know, but these issues do exist in our society. Should we not talk about them, although they do exist? And then she stopped for a couple seconds. And then she raised her head from, staring at her coffee. And she said that, I think we should at least present existing discussions on different topics. And she said, yes, I think we should definitely continue to face head on what people are afraid to face. And I think this production is a very good example of that. She said that to me. And coming from, it's not healthy, to saying, yes, let's do this, let's do more of this. There we go. I think with that, we managed to change someone's idea or openness for dialogue. And that step is very crucial. It's critical to whatever that is, that is not so much discussed on, or that may be in the past condemned, or not willing to talk about. It is a first step that we can talk about things. Can we at least talk about that, like deviates production? So that's the baby steps, facilitating dialogues. And furthermore, what I want to sort of touch on is taking two other examples from the National Kaohsiung Center for the Arts. But we always need to look at what the problem is at hand and what problem do we want to solve. That's first, what the problem is. And secondly is, how long are we prepared to invest in this solution? Investing is time-wise. Time is most valuable, and also financially. And so I'm taking these two examples. One is thinking about whose voice is missing from our community, and why are they missing? Where are they? How do we reach them? And what sort of relationship do we want with them? And we thought about, who do we want our future leaders to be? And what sort of qualities do we want to see in our future leaders? And from that, we look around at our surroundings. The future is in the hands of the next generation. I mean, for our generation, or the compound generations in the past, we've already messed up a lot of things already. And I think it's inevitable that the older generation keeps messing up something for the next generation. There is always the next generation. I mean, look at our planet now. I look at, how climate has really come back and bite us. Look at some of our world leaders today. Are these the qualities that we want? So, okay, so future leaders. And I have to admit, we all have to admit that it would not be us. For us in Taiwan, what I grew up with, the cram school education system and the lack of arts education is pretty much shaping us to be less creative, less critical thinking, and less problem solving. So we have to relearn that ourselves as we enter society, when we have freedom from exams and such, that we learn these skills ourselves. But a majority of our society, of our peers in society, do not have the opportunities to rethink these issues. So what can we do in our power to shift this? Even if this is, the slightest possibility, we should task ourselves in making this happen, task ourselves in this mission. And this is one of the programs that we did when I was still at the Art Center, Wei Wing. This is the first edition that we did for teens. The voice is lacking in our society. I'm not sure about in Malaysia or other countries, but certainly in Taiwan, the voices lacking are actually the teenagers. Where are they? Like, who listens to them? There's everybody, the parents automatically says, finish your schoolwork, get into a great school. That's actually, what our parents say to us. And then when you enter society, things will work out. So we did the Teens in Theater. We want to reconnect, but we also think that we need to bring arts into the teenagers, either lives or extracurriculum, or even in the curriculum is actually what we really aspire for. And this is sort of, this is very different, differently structured from other theater camps in Taiwan, whereas most of the theater camps actually create an environment, a platform, a stage for the teens, for the kids to be able to act on stage, okay, to be a star on stage. Everybody thinks that automatically when you go into the theater business, go into performing arts, you're the one standing in front of the audience. That's most visible. So, that's, of course, that's how people would view performing arts, a very, in the limelight situation. But is this what we wanted? We give them acting lessons. We let them rehearse, and they perform, and parents come to the theater to watch a showcase. What does it do for them? And if in the market already, a lot of people are providing this sort of the similar programs, do we need to provide another copy or another edition of the same sentiment? So what we wanted at that time in 2016, the art center was still in construction, so it's not opened yet. So we had the luxury of actually collecting opinions, collecting ideas. So we wanted the teens to have a voice in how Wei Wing is going to turn out, how to shape Wei Wing, how to shape the art center's program. And so we asked them it is a 5-day program. So during the 5 days, different topics, either pertaining to different performing arts genres, behind the scenes, on stage, just different aspects of the theater are provided. But what the ultimate goal is at the end of the 5-day camp, that these kids, these teens, will be able to present their ideas for the future Wei Wing. And if these ideas are probable, that it will be adopted into the Art Center's program. And we would invite the young adults to come and sit in the planning committee. And with that in mind, we also invited many program curators, festival directors to come and see their presentation. So if it also might be something that other art centers would be interested in. And the art center in Kaohsiung is actually located in a very big park, and this is one of the pitches, ideas that this group of teenagers had for Weiwing, is using the park and the pathways that lead up to Weiwing and fire them up with different installations, artworks that would gradually pave the way as people walked towards the art center. We thought this was phenomenal. But the park didn't belong to the art center, so it was sort of shifted. But in these programs, it's actually us as adults, as practitioners, that are really mind blown by these young adults to bring such simple but yet so charming ideas that reminds us what the basics of. It's about human connections. It's about that human touch. It's about being touched, how arts make people feel. And that's the Teens in Theater Camp program. And actually, during this program, we had I think about 30 from different schools. Also, a more troubled children. So, but after the 5 days, you could actually feel the kids are actually opening up, and they're they're braver to speak their minds. And after this camp, we followed up with a couple of teenagers, inviting them back to the art center on multiple occasions. So they could, we would provide them access to rehearsals, to dress rehearsals, to some performances. So they could actually write their own opinions, their own critiques on the works, and we would put them up on our main website information channels to encourage that the youngsters can speak their mind and don't be afraid to speak their mind. What we're looking at is basically opinion leaders for the future. And this is a very long investment, time-wise. So when we started this, we were actually looking for a project that carries 10 years down the line in the future. So when they grow up, when they enter the workforce, it may shift their thinking. It may actually contribute to promoting the arts from their point of view into their own communities as well. So that was one, working with younger people. And this is one that we're working with more seasoned citizens. So this project is called Young Hearts. It is actually a project that puts different generations together. So it's a generation mix. And we actually got this idea from, I think, from a project in Amsterdam, a housing project in Amsterdam, I believe, or the Netherlands, or Nordic countries. I can't remember. So we read on this project. We saw this project in Europe that provided housing for younger people to go into old people's homes, to sort of facilitate these generational dialogues, and actually to draw the older generation to re-enter social events, to be more social. And to be more social, it actually helped the older generation, or the more seasoned citizens, to do better and to not lapse into more self-retraction. So we sort of took that idea and wanted to experiment if we could do it in the arts. It's also the problem at hand is actually in the city of Kaohsiung, the older population is a bigger population. And so we need to be able to reach out to this market share or potential market share that are not used to going to the theater. Because in ours, what we think in Taiwan, modern contemporary theater is merely a couple of decades. So it's not, the concept of theater is a very Western concept. In the past in Taiwan, theaters performances are, they happen in front of temples. So it's a very daily life situation. But nowadays with the big theaters, it's more of a journey. And a lot of the older generation did not have this experience of theater going. And but also we realize that the people in the South are more passionate. They're actually, because they have not accumulated a very distinct or a very picky selection or preference to what they like in performing arts. So that's the phase that we love, that people just soak up anything or are eager to learn about different things. So we sort of paired university students with the elders in the elders' homes together for a couple months. So they have chance. We create opportunities for them to gather, for social gatherings, to eat together, to talk, and to go to shows together. And they went to 3 shows during the 3 months. So the idea was for them to jointly attend all 3 shows, but the 3 shows are picked out, one by the university students, by the younger generation, and one choice is picked out by the older generation, and one is picked out by us at the Arts Center. So we sort of want them to get a mix of different things that they are not accustomed to seeing. And this actually became a very, very touching project, not only for the participants, the elders and the young university students, but us as well. As we can see, they evolved along the 3 months, and how they came out of their shells and started sharing stories. And at the very end of the program, we did a sort of a graduation ceremony, and it was all tears. So from that, we felt that this is something that is really of value. Not only, for us, the problem at the very beginning was in multiple folds. So the very basic is we hope to create or to develop, cultivate an audience that will be willing to experiment and to try different things. But also we want the more elder generation to be more active in the city, to be more adventurous, to try different things, and to have opinions and to re-enter social gatherings. And we also want the young students to be able to get a glimpse into the minds of these very experienced citizens who's lived their lives. They must have so many stories, so many experiences that we can learn from. And that actually did make sense and did very well. And the project has been a model that has been year by year constantly reshaped a little bit. We're still trying to find, the Art Center is still trying to find ways to actually grow the program, but it is still at the very center of the program in Kaohsiung right now. So before I go to other examples, I just wanted to ask everybody if you have any questions or any comments that you want to pipe in.
Since we are still within this
Okay.
topic, so maybe we could pick up one from the audience. There was this question came in, so curious to hear what the parents' reactions were and whether these parents ever have the habit of going to the theater, adding this direct to the teens program earlier that we spoke about. Yeah.
Okay. So the teens program. No, actually the parents were never theater goers. But as with Taiwanese parents, do like to give children opportunities to different access to different arts and talents. So, but I think at the very end of the program, when they were pitching ideas, it really shocked the parents. Well, I shouldn't say shocked. It was very surprising for the parents and also for the other center directors as well, because they've never really thought that children of that age, the teenagers, would come up with such detailed and well-rounded plans, and how they present their ideas, the logic behind it was it made absolute sense to them. So it sort of shed light on what teenagers can do if we can give them the opportunities. So that was when it was sort of a big revelation for everybody. But whether or not the parents actually started coming to theaters, I'm afraid I did not follow up on that. We should have. Okay. The AI, the big data, the 5G. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if there's any more questions coming in.
I have to say, in the arts, it's just beginning to gain momentum on these topics. Of course, there has been always artists who have focused on these. It's not very widespread, but since the pandemic and the shows are all canceled, other than sitting at home worrying about our futures, actually there has been very interesting talks about the 5G and what's to be expected. And it is a big, also a big focus for the Taiwanese government, as they hold the Arts and Technology Symposium every October. It has been a focus to talk about 5G and how it can be used, employed in the arts. And for the past month, I have been getting a lot of inquiries on how, if artists are interested in exploring that field with the technology providers. So I'm very optimistic, and I'm very excited to see what comes out of these couple months of discussions on these topics.
Yeah, there's quite a few more. So when launching such program, like you show us about the old folks and young people program, how long it takes to make this program happen?
How long did it take? You mean from if I have to say from the starting point, thinking about it and thinking about ways to go about it, it actually, thinking about the steps actually takes a longer time, but also because they're quite new approaches, it also takes a long time to talk to the community, to get people to buy in on the idea. So it really depends on who your supporters are, who you talk to. It takes, quite a bit of time. I believe both. I believe the team did not take so much time, but the generational mix, the Young Hearts program, took a very, very long time to find. It took more than a year to find collaborators, to sort of talk to people relentlessly, trying to get people to understand what we want to do. But it's basically, for us, it's basically very simple idea taken from a different field and trying to employ it into the arts field. And basically that's what we try to do. We see a good idea, we think about how we adopt and adapt to the arts field and create something that will work for us. It differs slightly. Let's see. Anything?
There's more. So if we have a space or stage or boulevard open to public or NGO use for free, what we can do to help in future community? This is such a wide topic. Yeah.
This is very wide. I don't know. I think there's infinite possibilities when you have a space. I have to say, and every space is different. Not only the locale, but also its history, its size, its history, its where it's situated, the community. Is all very different, but for free, I would have to say, for NGOs to use for free.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So basically, they provide the venue, the so-called hardware. Yeah. I think in this situation, probably we also have to look into like the programming, the software, because this happen rather often when we have provider of hardware, but then it's the software, it's the programming that brings people and that makes things happen. And yeah, I think that's something that is really important to look into if you own a space or a venue.
True.
Yeah. Seems quite a bit of interest in the teen theater camp. There's another question coming. Yeah, so were there any issues that came up in managing a group of 30 teens in terms of maintaining engagement? I'm assuming they applied for the camp and wanted to be there. And were there counselors involved? Or did you encounter any issues with having to prove or show measurable numbers to the funders after the program?
Okay. Well, first of all, managing the group of teens. Oh my God, there's such a hard, such a very challenging, very different group of people. There were glitches, I have to say. It's a learning experience for us. Although we've all went through that phase, I think it's very it's way in the past. So there are some glitches, I have to say. It's actually trying to understand. But what we essentially are responsible for is when they are with us, and we do have counselors for every class to keep. Aside from the speakers, we have counselors. We have in the room. I think there are 4, just to make sure. I think during the classes. During the camp, there weren't too many problems because it's not like a sleepover camp, so they go home every day. So there's not so much of a problem, but the problem is actually in the transportation, in between us and home, what happens there. And this is sort of a dilemma where we don't have control of where they go. And if the families don't come and pick them up, or they've not established this trust or this bond, something might happen. And something did happen. But it's minor. I would say minor compared to, any other things. There was one instance that 3 teenagers went to a convenience store, bought off a can of beer to share among themselves, and because they're underage, and they went home. The parents found out, and that's how we found out. So they were actually expelled from the program. But it was by demand from the school. So although we would like to keep them, but we also realized this was a situation that we had not really anticipated we did not think that it would happen. So it was quite a learning experience for us as well. And of course we respect the school and the families for their decisions. But that in turn, I'll also, in the future programming, when we work with teens, it's always an issue in our minds, like how to prevent that from happening. Okay. And showing their funders, it has not been such a big problem, because in the very beginning of these sort of programs, we go to people that we think are, they identify with these values, with these program values. So it's about that. It's not about the entire number that you impact. It's about the totality of the one individual that you impact with this program. We always try to, make our arguments that way. It's a life-changing experience for whoever comes to the program. So Bert says, where does one cross the line from marketing education to placemaking? Cross the line? I don't know. Cross the line. I think everything is, like I said, I think everything we do in arts and what I do in arts marketing, it's always coming from the belief that we can change for the better. And so with that in mind, it always sort of crossovers to different things. So it's making suggestions because we want to achieve that change for the better. So it sort of does blur the line, I think. But it makes complete sense for me, as well, at least.
There is also one question from the earlier chat that that is in coincidence. Actually, I would also like to bring up this question even before this whole session. So this question actually talks about, for me, the bigger challenge is how do we let the society know that arts or culture industry is a necessity and about social change. So because in the bigger sphere of the economy, we are always considered as disposable income.
Yeah. I have to I have to say, from my point of view, it's very difficult to have a very widespread influence at one certain moment in time. It's not going to flip everything, like once you wake up the next morning. It never happens that way. So that's why I think every one of us in the arts, or whoever we can influence in our community, in our immediate circle of friends and family, is actually, starting from us and our very immediate circles to push out, and to make people understand that it's important. It doesn't happen overnight. Sadly,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
exactly. Yes. Yeah. When I first know Katie, I was like, it's really blew my mind because I really salute how you take that position of being like in the marketing for the arts, because I think this is among the hardest job in the industry, because as all of us know, arts and culture is among the hardest thing to so-called market. And I really salute your courage to take up this responsibility to do that, because it is really challenging, and it doesn't really necessarily always coincide with especially the business world, or in a business model, or in a way of how we actually measure. Yeah. So maybe like what type of measurements that we can actually look into, maybe from your experience, like we talk a lot about the value of the arts, and yeah, how do we value that, and do you maybe have anything to share about how do we actually measure different type of measurement? For example, we got a few examples from your sharing earlier. For example, like when you talk about the LGBTQ shows, and you had coffee with the patron, and and then later on the situation flip over, and then she changes her mind, and I think that's also a way of a measurement, even though when we look at the box office, maybe it's not as successful when you measure it from the number of audience. Maybe you have 60% or 70% that is not considered as successful. But then from a different perspective, when we look into the same case, there is actually different measurements that is a success. So maybe yeah. So any experience or any opinions you would like to share about different forms or different ways of measuring success in the arts? Yeah.
Success. I think just changing people's mind is a big achievement, and I think for us, not yet. Maybe I'm just very lucky that I've always been able to work my way through the funders, the policy makers, to see what we see, to see the value of what we see. But it's definitely more than numbers. Like I said, it's not 3,000. It's not like 1,000 participants. It's about let's say the 30 participants that you influence 1/3 of them. They stick with you for a long time. And that's a big achievement, because that's like 33% of the participants. And we always try to add on to, to these figures, these numbers, actual human stories to illustrate these life-changing experiences that the arts has brought to these first-timers. And of course, there are internal measurements for ourselves when we were at the art center about first-timers and how often they repeat their visits. So how do you track these? How do you entice them to come back? How frequent do they come back? As opposed to, always focusing about the number of attendance. It's basically the marketing rule of the 80 and 20 principle. 80% of your revenue comes from your 20% loyal customers. So for us, we always do focus on participant numbers, but we also put more emphasis on these more frequent followers that can make a difference, that can be your ambassadors to promote arts beyond this arena. We're still trying to come up with different KPIs all the time as well. Yeah?
Yeah, so going back to this arts as necessity.
I think it's a
issue.
necessity, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't think that.
Yeah. So yeah. So is that going back to the question from Cindy? So yeah, it's a bigger challenge on how we let the society know that arts and culture is a necessity and about social change. So maybe any suggestion on baby steps or as I think in this question it also comes in different level, because when you're individual or you're an artist collective or an organization, or you are a venue or festival, or when you're standing in different position in the ecosystem, it's different role that they have to play. Yeah.
But I have to say that it's well, to be truthful, although I think it's a necessity, that's because I really do enjoy, my mind being stimulated all the time. But as really what you need to survive, it's not, to be truthfully speaking, in human race survival history. It's really not. And so that's why we're the first to go when people are hungry, when people have no place to stay, no money. We're always the first to go. Because if you don't tend to your basic needs for survival, basic survival, how do you think about different things beyond, what you need to keep you going to the next day? I think I think we like to think that the whole society can buy in on this, but it's a very long journey to that. But baby steps is trying to convert, non-religious people, non-arts religious people into believers. I try to do it every season. Like convert two people who don't go to theaters, who don't go to arts exhibitions to go. Some are successful, some are not. I have a sibling that I've known for decades, never goes to the theater. Ever, never, ever goes to the theater. I've given up on her. But that being said, I have to say I was reading something on Seth Godin the other day, and he was saying, to get the Met in New York to be queued up, it only takes less than 1% of tourists that comes in to the New York City every day. So if that's less than 1%, let's say we round it up to 1%, why do you focus your energy on 99% of the people? Hallelujah. Okay, so I'm devising new marketing schemes based on that concept recently. I think it's just how you influence the people you can influence, target. I brought a friend who's an exhibition curator last December to see a show by a Taiwanese group called Riverbed. And it was the first time that she stepped into the experimental theater in Taipei. It was the first time. I was very proud of her. And she said to me, and it was sort of a conceptual work. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's gorgeous. The work is always gorgeous. And And she came out of the theater saying, "Oh, this is interesting. I mean, visually it's stunning. So thank you for bringing me. And next time, if you see something interesting, just let me know so we can go to see it together." And I was like, "Yes, aha, okay, we got one. So let's not let that one get away from us." So it's these, bit by bit, we convert people into believers with us, and we latch onto them. I think that's basically, and they will in turn be able to influence others, hopefully.
I really love that, and yeah, it's true, because from my personal experience as well, it's always, not to say easier, but people tend to believe a third party. So with for example, myself, I tell people about how great going into theater is. People think like naturally, of course, because you're working in the performing arts. But then when someone who is maybe not from the scene and then tells them this is like really great, and then they really think, okay, this is really great. That kind of thing. So yeah, in the beginning we have to convert as many people, and then they become the spokesperson of the industry.
I mean, I have to say, us being in the arts, we're more immune, okay, because we see more. So one less than perfect or less than good artwork creation doesn't put us off for life. I mean, we see it as an experience that we can talk about it. But that's because we have this circle of friends that can talk about this with us. And I think for a lot of people in their immediate circle of friends, they don't have people that they can speak with about the things that they've seen. So what I try to do is create that opportunity for people who are first-time goers, to be able to slowly speak their mind about the work that they saw. Even, for strangers, when I was working at the art center, I will always be on the floor, smiling to people, talking to people, just chatting up with people to make them feel welcomed, but also to let them speak their mind. And if they feel that, they need to know that there is no right and wrong in what they perceive. And then maybe they will feel more confident to come in next week or 2 weeks from now to see another show. I mean, we see bad shows all the time, but it's only with these experiences that we get to know how, our preferences. We know what we want, we know what we like, and I think everybody needs to go through that process.
Yeah. There's this really long question from Tara. Maybe Tara, you would like to speak up on about, I believe it's about site-specific work that is created in a non-Western based built venues.
Yes. Yeah. Oh dear, sorry. That's not, sorry. My meeting's just going on. Sorry, I just had a battery problem there. Hi, everyone. I know on the screen I'm identified as Tara, but that's my daughter's name. I'm using her Zoom account. My name is Veronica, and I was a journalist, an arts journalist and editor in Malaysia for 11 years with various publications. So, okay. Malaysia has various forms of theatre which do not need costly built venues with entry by tickets, which in these venues, I was a theatre student before, and also I taught art history. So I do know that many, normal, ordinary folks in Malaysia, they view these costly built venues and all these concepts of tickets as a Western way of presenting and consuming art. I know that Taiwan has these sorts of performing art forms as well. And I was interested in your ideas on how we can move towards these more accessible forms so that audiences and general public members who are affected by COVID-19 income-wise, okay, they will reinvest or start investing emotionally in the performing arts. instead of seeing the performing arts as a financial drain, in this past 1 month, I've been observing public response towards Malaysian artists asking for state and corporate sector help. And quite a significant part of public response is that, oh, you shouldn't be asking for that help. You're a financial drain on our country right now. So I feel we in theatre, we need to move faster and further along that line of our existing efforts to take the stage out of these Western-based built venues and show more of the public that we are part of them. Right now, I think they don't believe us when we say that.
Hi, Veronica. Thank you for
Hi.
that.
Thanks.
I really agree. So for at least in the past couple of years, what I feel that's very close to my heart is actually bringing the arts to more people, to make it more accessible. I think, but there are so many different issues to that, different ideas to that. I want to say in response to the COVID-19 lockdown worldwide, it actually just brings back, well, finally, at least in Taiwan, the discussion on digital theater. So it's suddenly this explosion of digital content on the internet everywhere. So, but for me, what digital theater should actually be doing, I mean, I identify with these contents, and suddenly people are willing to release these contents. Whereas in the past, it has been a big debate about, you know, if people see it online, they don't want to see it again in theaters. But I don't really think that's the case. I mean, from my experience of watching NT Live, I don't watch it anymore because I don't like to be sitting in a theater, in a movie theater to look at, you know, a filmed theater production. But that's just me. But I think the value of digital theater, it should be educational wise. It should be reaching to places that do not have theaters. So I think, especially in Taiwan, theaters are basically a metropolitan thing. It's a big cities thing. But the majority of society, of the population, are spread out in different cities, different townships that does not have theater facilities. So, but what we have in Taiwan is this massive coverage of, you know, internet, of being connected. It's everywhere. It's so fast. So that's my personal belief, is actually digital theater should be a form that reaches out to communities and people that does not have access in their immediate surroundings, theater access. That's one of the things that I believe in for digital theater. But also a lot of projects in Taiwan goes into more rural areas. Cloudgate does that every single year, and it goes into even more rural areas, more and more each year, because we believe that the younger you start to come in contact with the arts, when you grow up, when you know, come to the big city in the future, or when you have access when you were a kid, it's more likely that you would want to pass this on to the next generation. So I think it's devising just different programs that corporations or funders would identify with. I think for us in Taiwan, it's slightly more, the corporations for these are more, I would say they're more supportive of these programs. Does that make sense?
Yes. Of course, yes. I think there were a few more we can pick up before we end this session. So, is it worth to sacrifice our humanity in order to advance our technology to achieve greater heights? Do we need to cross the line to achieve it? In the form of arts, how can we balance the harmony and discord in our society so we do not lose sight of it?
Ejane, go.
Yeah. Maybe, okay, who actually raised this question here in the room? Maybe if you want to elaborate a little bit further. I think Li Longfen, someone named Li Longfen who raised this. Do you want to maybe speak up and elaborate further? Do we have it?
Maybe not in the chat room anymore.
Uh-huh. Because is it worth to sacrifice our humanity in order to advance our technology to achieve greater heights?
What does that mean?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry, maybe I'm not a technological, I'm tech savvy in a sense, but maybe not such a technological brain, as in sacrifice what humanity?
I don't think it's necessary to put this in opposition. I mean, like these two, like humanity and technology. I mean, this is the era to actually, for me, at least, this is the era to actually, for this to collaborate and grow side by side. We don't have to start with to sacrifice our humanity. At least, I don't know. For me, at least, yeah.
I have to, I admit, I love technology, and one of my favorite readings is the Wired magazine. I love the Wired magazine because it's always like new ideas, and these new ideas actually fuel inspirations for what we can do in the arts, because it's basically human desires and human needs that propels progress in technology. So, and actually in the arts, it's about human emotions and human needs. So there's a lot of overlapping in the basic infrastructure or the basic logic in that. I do agree. I don't think it's a opposition thing.
Yeah. I got a message here. I think Cindy wants to speak up. There is this opinion from Cindy. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kathy, for doing this. I've really enjoyed your presentation. I think most of us are all in the Asia region and have a very, have an Asian background growing up, myself included, but I grew up in the United States. So I've kind of like growing up in a world of growing up, in a very deeply rooted performing arts environment. And I think that's a challenge that most Asian, even myself as a performing arts servant and who's been practicing performing arts, in this business for a long time, I still could barely get my parents, who still lives in New York for the last 30, 40 years, to go into the theater and, bringing them to some shows at Lincoln Center. My mom was, of course, deeply impacted, yet my dad was like, I still don't get it. And that was his final verdict walking out of Lincoln Center. In terms of the question that I was posing, is something just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, is I think us as performing arts need to also look at ourselves and how are we communicating with the rest of the world. Because I came actually from the recording industry, the quote unquote entertainment commercial. And I always find it really hard to try to explain to the performing arts side, like, why does entertainment and performing arts can't coexist with each other? I recently read an interview by this author, Tom Nichols. He wrote this book called The Death of the Expertise. And I think in many ways, the performing arts is also a death to ourselves, because we don't want to talk in a language that the rest of the massive, the rest of the world, the common denominator. When I was in the recording industry, my mentor would always say, if that Joe Schmo at the gas station is listening and buying that CD or that record, you did the right job. And that's our thing. We as an industry oftentimes forget who we want to reach. Yes, we do want to make social impact, and I think that's very much important, and what we do as advocacies, right? And we're trying to make an impact, but are we presenting it in a way that people actually understand that language? Are we speaking in jargons and words that you need, a doctorate degree to understand? Mm-hmm. And maybe we need to also look at that ourselves first. Why can't sexy and performing arts be in the same sentence? Like, do we, that's the thing. And that's how we have to look at ourselves. That, it is, at the end of the day, like you said earlier, Kathy, is it choosing between putting food on the table, or is it choosing between entertainment? And that is the reality. We will always be a disposable income, even from the entertainment side or from the performing arts side, because a lot of our industry, whether it's in Asia, the Middle East, or the Western world, it's very much dictated by policies of the government. So I always try to explain to my parents, I know the political situations very well, because we're the first ones to be impacted by what's going on politically. So, true. But that being said, we also have to figure out, well, how do we still try to make performing arts be a part of our lives, even though we're still trying to put food on the table?
Can I applaud you first? I was having the exact same discussion with a friend last night. I have to say it is a long journey. I mean, still being doing marketing in the arts field for so many years, it's still a struggle to try to communicate the artist's intentions with the mass public, or not even the mass public, just putting information out there that people can actually understand. I think that's, for us, it's minuscule. It's like the first step, but it's such a monumental challenge to try to translate into, if I cannot understand, I believe that a majority of the society do not understand that. And this is something that we battle, or we try constantly to talk with programmers or with artists every single day. Do we want more people to see the work and then talk about the work? Or do we want the same people and the same frailing audiences who identifies with this sort of things, this sort of language? Do we expect them to come back for 30 more years? I don't know. This is a forever ongoing debate for myself as well.
Yeah, that's a really great open question to everyone in the room to end this session, actually, I think, because it's a long journey, and all these questions recur every now and then. So unfortunately we have to end this year, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Kathy, for doing this.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope we can connect again in the future. Thank you.